Well, good day and welcome to another session with Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles. Hi, my name is Oliver Blue, and I will be your temporary guide and your temporary host today for today's session. And I am so delighted. I am so excited. Yes, I am excited, and you should be too. It's a decision that we make to be excited. It's a decision that we make to be happy, to be joyous, to be peaceful, to be certain. It's a decision that we make to be our true self. And so today we're going to be looking into workbook lesson 247 out of A Course in Miracles. And if you are with us for the first time, we say hello and welcome. If you've been with us on this journey, for the entire journey, we're happy and grateful for your commitment. If you've been in and out, we're happy and grateful for your in as well as your out. And so today's idea, which is what this whole journey is all about, is taking one idea each day, a God idea, an idea that amplifies reality, that amplifies the truth. And we take that idea for that particular day, and we not only study the meaning of the idea, but we also practice the idea so that in our practicing, we come to realize that the idea that is being introduced is a reality and an experience that we can have. And so today's idea is, without forgiveness, I will still be blind. Let me say that again. Without forgiveness, not only the idea of forgiveness, but the practice of it. Without the practice of it, there is no experience of it. So without forgiveness, I will be blind. And so we're going to look into this thought today. And let's look at the opposite of the thought. The opposite of the thought, which will help us to understand it, is this. With forgiveness, I will have sight. I will have vision. With forgiveness, I will have Christ's vision. In other words, I will see from the perspective or from the point of view of Christ. Christ represents that which God created, namely, or as we use the name to describe Christ, is I am. So we can say it this way. With forgiveness, I am, or I have, or I am the sight, or I am the Christ sight, or I can see as Christ. So let's see what it says here. Without forgiveness, I will still be blind. It says sin. Oh, that's that S word. Anytime you hear that S word, some type of reaction happens based on our past experience with the word sin or the concept of sin. Well, you know, the Course here is a very advanced spiritual book, and it has elevated our understanding or awareness or consciousness towards the idea that is commonly used in the world called sin, the S word, I call it. And so it starts here by saying sin is the symbol of attack. Sin is the symbol of attack. Now, if you've been with us any time, you understand that from the course's perspective, that the idea of sin as we have known it, as we have been conditioned, as we have been taught, the idea of sin from the course's perspective is not a true idea. It's a false idea. The idea of sin, as we have been taught and trained, and as a lot of religious doctrines have been passed on from generation to generation, the whole idea of sin from the course's perspective is that it is a false idea. It is not a God idea. It's not a God reality. So therefore, sin is a made up idea of humanity. It is not an idea in the mind of God. God is not aware of a concept of sin. God is not aware of sin. How can that which is pure and holy, how can that which is light only, how can it have any awareness or consciousness towards an idea of sin? It's just like, how can water and oil mix? It can't. How can light and dark cross? It can't. How can up be down? It's impossible. How can love and hate exist together? It can't. So how can God, or how can love and sin live in the same camp or be a reality in the same camp? It's impossible. So right off the bat here, we want to say that sin is not an idea of God. It's not a God idea. It's not something that God takes and have to respond to, contrary to how we've been conditioned, how we've been taught and trained, how we've been conformed to this world's idea of the concept of sin. But here it says sin is the symbol of attack. It symbolizes attack. It symbolizes separation. It symbolizes punishment. And so it says sin is the symbol of attack. If you behold it anywhere, it says, if it is behold anywhere by you or me or anyone, the concept of sin, it says, your beholding of it. In other words, your believing that it is real and that it is true. It says, you will suffer from beholding the idea of sin. It says it's not that what you see will suffer. It says you will suffer from beholding the symbol of attack, which is sin. And from a universal standpoint, the idea of sin comes from the breaking of the law. It comes from the idea of that one can successfully undo that which has been done. And we know that in reality, in eternity, that which God creates is permanent. That which God creates cannot be altered or it cannot be changed. So from God's perspective, anything that God is, or anything that God has extended, or creation, or anything that God has created, it is impossible to be broken or to be altered or to be changed. God creates like unto himself, and God is light. And in God, there is no darkness. That means in God, there is no sin. So the thought of sin, even the idea of sin, is not even in awareness to love. So let's make this point right here straight, that sin is not an idea of God. Sin is a made up concept that man made up. and place himself under the imprisonment of the idea of the S word, which is sin. We did it to ourselves. We did it to ourselves. And we're still promoting the idea. And it has messed up the minds of so many. It has messed up the mind of so many. To walk in sin consciousness, meaning you are constantly aware that what you are beholding has been undone or changed, and the results of that is the deserving of punishment. That's what the concept or the idea of sin does to our consciousness. It puts us in a place of sin consciousness, which leads to guilt and ultimately fear. Sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. That's the progression that one goes through when they behold the idea that they have done something wrong, when they behold the idea that that which is eternal can be altered or can be changed, when they hold the idea that that which God created can be altered and changed, it can be separated from its source, it can make of itself something totally different than what God created. All this is the thinking that arises when we embrace the idea of separation, which is an idea that covers the whole gamut of sin. And so we're going to deal with this subject today. If you have been struggling with sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, you are in the right place. You are in the right place. And so the idea of sin here is said it is a symbol of attack. It says, behold it anywhere, and I will suffer. For forgiveness is the only means whereby Christ's vision comes to me. Christ's vision does not come through the belief or our belief through the belief or the idea of sin. It only comes through forgiveness. But we have majored in our traditional religions. We have majored within this world that we've made. We have majored on the idea of sin. And so we have built a society that is sin conscious, full of guilt, and full of fear. And then we see the results of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. We see the results running rampant in the world. We see all of the unloving acts that are being on display here, even in 2022, where they are a result of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, which has in its nature attack. And so we see why the attacks are taking place. Here it says sin is a symbol of attack. Behold it anywhere, and I will suffer. And so the Course in Miracles addresses this idea straight on from a perspective of oneness, from a perspective of truth, from a perspective of knowledge and reality, from a perspective of eternity. And so we're going to discuss the Course's idea of the S word, sin. And so if you would look on page 419 in the workbook lesson under what is sin, we're going to go through a few of these passages. And this is what the Course says about sin. We know what ideas we bring to these lessons a lot of time, and what the Course offers us in many cases is very startling, almost unbelievable at times. So let's be open and see what it says. It says, sin is insanity. Right off the bat, it said the concept or the idea of sin as we know it, the course says it's insanity. It is the means by which the mind is driven mad. Yeah, this idea of sin, this thought of sin consciousness, which leads to guilt and fear, it says it is the means by which the mind is driven mad. It seeks to let illusions take the place of the truth. So here, right off the bat, it is saying that the idea of sin and truth are totally opposite. And it says here that it seeks to allow illusions to take the place of the truth. So sin is a false idea that seeks to take the place of the truth. And that false idea has infiltrated humanity and humanity's thinking, which has been so influential in how humanity has built this world based on the idea of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. All our systems have an element of this in it. And what it has led to is, like it says, it leads to attack. It's an attack. The idea is all based on attack. Why? Because there is this idea of guilt that leads to fear. And that one that is put in a position of fear has this feeling of self-defense, or having to defend oneself, or building fences up, or perceiving himself as under attack or under threat. And so one positions himself by attacking that which it perceives to be sin. And so that's why it says, anyone that sees it, if you see it anywhere, you will suffer. You will suffer. Our perception to see sin, guilt, and fear outside of us, it says it will lead to suffering. And so how do we get out of that dilemma? It's going to explain it to us here, because that's insanity. That is really insanity. It says, it is the means by which the mind is driven mad and seeks to let illusions take place of the truth. And being mad, it sees illusion where the truth should be. So when we look outside of ourselves and through a false perception and behold the idea of sin in something outside of ourselves, it said it is illusions that are trying to take the place of the truth. It is illusions that we are in projections that we're projecting out of our own sin consciousness, guilt, and fear on something outside of us. And generally it is on another. It's on another. It's on a brother. It's on a sister. And it's not necessarily that they are the symbol of sin. It is that we're projecting what is already an idea in our own mind. And that's why it says, wherever you behold it, you will suffer, because where you see it, it is just an indication that you're seeing it within yourself. You're seeing it within yourself. And so we seek to project it out on another. It says, it sees illusions where the truth should be and where it really is. Sin gives the body eyes. For what is there the sinless would behold? It says, what need have they of sights or sounds or touch? What would they hear or reach to grasp? what would they sense at all? It says to sense is not to know. And like I know, when we are totally dependent on our 5 physical senses, what we see and taste and hear and touch and smell, it gives us information, but generally that information is incomplete. But we seek to make a judgment based on this incomplete information that we are receiving from our 5 physical senses, from our senses. So that means that we're depending on our senses to get our true perception. And in 100% of the cases, our perceptions are going to be false. They're going to be wrong. They're going to be incomplete. Really, what we're going to get from them is an idea of our very own self. And not liking the idea, not being comfortable with the idea about ourselves, we seek to project it out on others. That's what we do. And it says, what would they hear or reach to grasp? What would they sense at all? To sense is not to know. When you know who you are, when you know your true identity, when you know your oneness with God, when you know your guiltlessness, your sinlessness, when you understand and know your freedom in God, when you know your true nature as love, when you know yourself as an infinite and impersonal and self-aware being, when you're not confused about who you are, it says, then you won't rely on your senses to guide you. You won't allow on your senses to form perceptions about yourself and about others. When you know, he says, to sense is not to know, but to know is to use your senses properly. We were never designed to be led by our senses. We were never designed to be led by this outer world, by what we see, by what we taste, by what we smell, by what we hear, by what we touch. But in truth, we are designed to be led by what we know, and what we know is the truth that is true always. That God is, and therefore I am. That we all share this one life, this one love, this one being, this one reality that we call God, or that we call reality. That there's not a multiplicity, but there's only the one. This is what we are designed to be led by, the truth. And it's the leading of this truth, it's the embracing of this truth that sets us free. And so it says, all truth can be but filled with knowledge, can be filled with the knowing. This knowledge he is talking about, it's not talking about information, but he's talking about a knowing, an inner knowing, where you become so intimately aware with your nature, which is love, where you become so intimately acquainted with your true nature, which is oneness. This is the knowledge that it is referring to. Not just head knowledge, but a revelation, a direct communication from the truth itself, from life itself, that we are one, that we are whole and complete, that our very life is the life of God. This is the knowing that we are to be led by, and that we are to censor our senses to this knowing, so that we are free of sin consciousness, which doesn't exist, that we're free of guilt and fear, so that we don't attack ourselves, so that we don't attack anyone, because to attack anyone is to attack ourselves, because there's only one of us. And so it says The body is the instrument the mind made in its efforts to deceive itself. Ooh. Its purpose is to strive. Yet can the goal of striving change? And now the body serves a different aim for striving. What it seeks for now is chosen by the aim the mind has taken as replacement for the goal of self-perception. So the body is a wholly neutral thing. The body only carries out the commands of the mind. So it is the mind that needs to be what? Renewed. It's the mind that needs to be transformed, because the body only takes its instructions from the mind. So the body is a wholly neutral thing. The mind is an instrument of communication to communicate the reality of who we are, the love that we are, the freedom that we are, the oneness that we share. That's what the body is designed for. Not to be our personal identification. We are not bodies. We are not bodies. And so it says here that the body can be repurposed once the mind comes into a knowing of who it is. Your life, my life, can now become an instrument. Our bodies can become an instrument to communicate love only and to teach only love, because that is who we are. Once the mind is informed, once the mind accepts the reality of its reality as love. It says, what it seeks for now is chosen by the aim the mind has taken as a replacement to the goal of self-deception. When we totally depend on our 5 physical senses and on a knowledge that is based on sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, we will be self-deceived. On the contrary, when we embrace our true identity as love, it says here that the body can now be repurposed to become a communication device to share and to communicate and to teach only love. It says truth can be its aim as well as lies. It says truth can be its aim as well as lies. So the body can communicate the truth or lie depending on what is in the mind. So the mind is determining whether we are expressing the truth, whether we are extending truth, or whether we are extending a lie. And the truth is, sin is insanity. It is not a God idea. It's a man-made idea. So what are we extending? What are we communicating? When we're calling people sinners and separated from God, what are we spreading? Guilt. What are we extending? Fear. When we say that this is a God idea. God has no knowledge of separation. God has no knowledge of sin. God has no knowledge at all of anything that is not of love. There is no darkness in light. The darkness that we are aware of is the darkness that we have allowed in as a result of rejecting the reality that we are pure love and pure light. And so it says, the senses then will seek instead for witness to what is true. When we embrace our complete, pure, whole, and sinless and guiltless and fearless self, it says that our senses will seek instead for witnesses to that truth instead of witnesses to the lie of sin. Whatever's in your mind, Whatever you're thinking, and when you're not thinking with God's mind, when you're not thinking God's thoughts, your senses will seek out witnesses to bear witness to that which is not love. But when your mind has been renewed and transformed with the mind of Christ, with the thoughts of God, it says that your senses will seek out witnesses to what is true and will see truth everywhere and in everyone. So sin is the home of all illusions. The idea of sin is the home of all illusions, all false perceptions, which but stand for things imagined, issuing from thoughts that are untrue. They are the proof that what has not, it says, they are the truth, or are the proof that what has no reality is real. Sin proves God's Son is evil. It says timelessness must have an end. This is what the witnesses of the sin consciousness will seek to prove. That God's Son is evil, that timelessness must have an end, that eternal life must die, and God himself has lost the Son he loves, with but corruption to complete himself. His will forever overcome by death. Love is slain by hate, and peace to be no more. These are the witnesses that our senses will seek to reflect back to us when we don't think with the mind of God, with the mind of Christ, when we embrace this insane idea of sin consciousness. This is what the witnesses that our senses will seek to reflect back to us. And no wonder we see now why we see what's happening in the world. With all of the wild, vain imagining, all the destruction, all the attacks, all the threats, all the unloving thoughts and acts that we see that are on display in some of the most high places in the world, in places where you would think that they were mature people, leaders. You would think that these people would be in a place of maturity. But what we have seen on display is so much immaturity. We've seen so much display of unloving ideas, inequality in acts, that here it says they're insane. We use the word unprecedented. What mankind is trying to do to substitute and replace for the truth under the name of God in many cases. I think I'm getting on my soapbox. Let me get off. So it says sin is the home of all falsities, all illusions. The idea of it, because remember, sin is not real. It's not a real idea. It's not reality. It's unreality. And we have tried to make it reality, and we see what it has produced. We see the effects of it. And so it says, a madman's dreams are frightening. When you are mad, when you are upset, when you are full of inequality and hatred, when you become mad because of the idea of sin consciousness, it said it is frightening. And sin appears indeed to terrify. And yet, what sin perceives is but a childish game. We have made the error real. The error is not real. Separation is not real. We have not broken. We have not destroyed. We have not been successful at undoing what God did. What God did in creation remained untouched. It remains the same, and that includes you. What God did at creation is merely extend love. And so where there is a perception that there is no love, where there is an idea that love only is what is reality, we have seek to replace that with hatred. We have seek to place that with an idea of separation or an idea of sin. So it is not a God idea. It is a substitute that we have made. And we have made a mess with that idea. We have made a mess of so many people's lives, teaching them that they are sinners, teaching them that they are separate from God, teaching them that their nature is not the nature of love. And so, it's a madman's dream, and it's very frightening. Very frightening. And it says, a madman's dream are frightening, and sin appears indeed to terrify. And yet what sin perceives is but a childish game. It is a game of separation. It's a game of falsity. It's a game of illusions. It's a game of fantasy and vain imagining. It's a game of hallucination when we are seeing ourselves and labeling ourselves and labeling others as something other than the pure presence of God, labeling them something other than the holiness of God, labeling them something else other than God himself. We are doing this, and it must be undone. It must be undone. We have imprisoned so many people with this idea. And no wonder there's so much fear. No wonder there's so much attack. No wonder there's so much feeling of being under threat in the world. People have been deceived by this idea, and it needs to be corrected. It needs to be corrected. You are not a sinner. You are not separate from God. It is impossible for you to be separate from God. Only in your mind that has been conditioned and filled with falsehood. And it only takes a tiny shift in your perception to go from this falsehood of hatred and separation to the reality of love and oneness. Just a shift in your thinking. And then when we make that shift in our thinking, our perception will be shifted. Our senses will be shifted to go out and find the witnesses of love and oneness, instead of looking for the witnesses of sin, guilt, and fear. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. This is a course in miracles. This is a course in a shift in our perception. This is a course in mind training, a course in mind reversal. This is a course in healing that mind that was filled with falsehood. So it's a childish game to believe in sin. And we shouldn't teach our children that. We never taught our children that. And so they don't walk around in sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. They know that they're love only. Regardless of what they do, they're love only. Isn't that the way you look at your children? Regardless of what they do, you will never leave them, never forsake them. They're love only. They can't do any wrong. In a sense, well, how do you think you can have that perception about your children and the Father of us all don't have that perception about us? We think that God can actually walk away from us. God can actually disassociate himself from us. This is what we've been taught. God can actually, get so mad at us that he create this torture chamber called hell, and he send you to hell. We had this idea built into us. However, we in the natural can have children and love our children unconditionally. but we can't see God loving us unconditionally. There's something wrong with that. God is a loving Father, and we have tried to make of God an unloving Father by calling ourselves sinners and unfit and unworthy. How many times you hear you'll say, oh, I'm so unworthy. Or you tell people, oh, we're so unworthy. That is false humility. You are worthy because God made it so. So quit saying that. You're worthy. You are worthy. You are honored. You've been crowned with glory and honor that comes from God only. What are you saying about it? That you're not worthy when God has crowned you with glory and honor? It doesn't make sense. It's insanity. And we are bought into the insanity of this world. And I'm not talking about this world, but I'm talking about all of the systems of the world, including the religious systems that have been front and center in promoting this message. We need to stop it. We need to stop it. I was a promoter of that at one time when I was ignorant and I was self-deceived, but not anymore. The Son of God may play. The Son of God may play. He has become a body. He said, we can play that we become a body. We can play around with the idea that we have become a body. God created us bodiless, formless, timeless. And he says here that we can play that we have become a body by saying we are our body. We may play this game, and we have played this game to our own destruction. We have played this game with body identification to our own suffering, to our own demise, to our own unhappiness. It's time to stop playing the game. You are not a body. You are not who was born out of your mother's womb. That is not who you are. That is a body that was given to you to what? To journey around this dimensional plane, but that's not who you are. Just like your car downstairs or outside, that's not who you are. It's the car that transports you. Well, this body is just a transporting communication device, and we need to stop saying this is who we are. Understand that this body is what allows us to communicate and share these truths and these realities to one another. The truth that we're not sinners. The truth that we're innocent and whole and complete because God created us so. And begin to use our 5 physical senses and our 6 mental faculties in service to that reality, and quit using it to try to promote a lie. So we may play the game that we have become a body, prey to evil and to guilt, with but a little life that ends in death. We can play that game, and many have played that game not knowing who they are, only to come back again and again and again and again. How many lifetimes is it going to take for us to wake up to our true reality? It only takes one. And the one that you find yourself in right now, it is time for us, all of us, to wake up to the truth of who we are, to the truth of our infinite, impersonal, and self-aware self that is holy and full of the grace and full of the light that God is. It's time. It is time. We don't need to play around with the lies any longer. Destroying one another, hating one another, being separate and divided from one another, having bad feelings towards one another. It's time to stop playing that game, that ego game of separation. Thinking that we're going to win at the expense of someone else's loss. Thinking that someone has to win and someone has to lose. Thinking kill or be killed. It's time to stop playing that game and embrace the love that we share, the oneness that we share with each other and with our Creator. And be the light of the world. And forgive the world for what we thought it was. He said, but all the while we play this game, our Father shines in us. See, God knows nothing of this foolishness, this insanity that we're a part of. How can truth know of this insanity? It doesn't. Truth knows nothing of this insanity. Truth only knows truth. Light only knows light. Love only knows love. God only knows what he created. And what he created is you in his image and in his likeness. So God has no concept of sin or you ever been a sinner or ever been separated from him. Doesn't matter what you heard and who told it to you. I am here sharing the truth that is true always. You are as God is, and as he is, so are you in this world. As he is, so are you in this world. I refuse to calm down. As my wife walks in the door and say, take a breath, Oliver. I'm passionate about this. I'm very passionate about what I'm saying here because I hate to see people suffer. I love everything. As my wife exits my studio, I love everything because I am love. And I love to see people wake up and stop suffering and laboring in sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. And the only way out of that is the truth. That is true always. So I cannot give you but what the truth is. The truth is, sin is insanity. It's an insane idea that we made up. And because we made it up, we're the only one that can dispel that idea. But while we play the game of separation, sin, guilt, and fear, it says God continuously, or love shines in us continuously. And love loves with an everlasting love, which has pretenses, which its pretenses cannot change at all. Love cannot be changed. Love cannot be altered. Neither can you. You are the shining light of God. Love is always shining in you. Peace is shining in you now. Love is shining in you. It's always shining. That's what we mean when we say turn within to the light that is within you. Not within your body, but within your awareness. It's in your memory. The memory of God came into this dream with you to remind you of who you are. It is the voice that speaks for God. It is what we call the Holy Spirit, or the still small voice, urging you gently, never ever provoking you, never ever forcing you, never ever demanding of you, but gently urging you to turn within to the light, to the truth that is true always. And I'm only here as a temporary guide and host and teacher to remind you to turn within to your true reality as love. You are to the praise of God's glory. You are God's only thought. You are God's only happiness. And that's what God knows. That's what God sees. What do you see? Who do you say that you are? Are you the Christ? Are you the I am? Or are you thinking that you are what they told you you were? Which was an error, which was a falsehood, because that's the way they saw themselves, and they only passed that on. Well, today we break that idea. Today we put a stop to that idea. Today we reject that idea. And we only embrace the truth of who we are as the holy home of God, as the very expression of who God is. This is who we are. And nothing can change that. Nothing can separate us from that love, from that true identity. Nothing, absolutely, positively nothing. Not even our past acts, not even our past thoughts, not even our past ideas. Nothing, absolutely nothing. We remain as God created us. You remain as the shining light of God. Yes, you do. Go tell it on the mountain. So the last paragraph in this section on what is sin says, oh, how long, oh, creation of God. How long, children of God? How long? How long will the truth be with you? And you reject it. How long will the truth be with you? And you build these blocks. You build up these fences to keep the truth out. He said, how long? How long? O son, O daughter of God, will you remain, or will you maintain the game of sin? How long will you play with this idea of sin? How long will you allow sin consciousness to be your guide? How long will you allow guilt and fear to imprison you? How long? How long? Shall we not put away these sharp-edged children toys? Here it calls the belief in sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. He calls it children toys, sharp-edged children toys. And the reason they call it sharp-edged children toys is because toys with a sharp edge, they will hurt you. The idea of sin will hurt you. The belief in it will hurt you. The belief that you have done something wrong will hurt you. To believe that God doesn't love you will hurt you. To believe that you are separate from God will hurt you. To believe that you are inferior to God will hurt you. To believe that you have inequality with God, that will hurt you. They call it a sharp-edged sword, a sharp-edged toy. It says, shall we not put away these sharp-edged children toys? The idea of sin is a sharp-edged children toy that was given to us as a child. It was indoctrinated in us. It was conditioned in us to think that we were sinners. We were told that we're separate from God, that we're this, that we're that we're this color, that we're that color, that we're this. We put all these limitations on us unknowingly and innocently because that's all they knew. And we believed it, and this became our thought system. And we have walked the earth with these ideas in our heads. But today we put away the sharp children, the sharp-edged children toys of our thoughts, of our beliefs, of our limiting beliefs. We put them away. It says, how soon will you be ready to come home? How soon will you be ready to come home to your true reality? How ready are you, or how soon will you be ready to come home to your innocence, to your wholeness, to your completeness? When are you going to return? When will you be transformed by the renewing of your mind? When will you let go of all the illusions about yourself that you have held about yourself and embrace the truth that is true always about your oneness with God and your oneness with all humanity? When will you come home to this reality? It says, perhaps today. There is no sin, as you have seen. I have put on a good case here. There is no sin. And the concept or the idea of sin is a falsehood. It's not a God idea. It's not truth. It's an illusion. You are not separate from your Creator. You can never be separate from your Creator. You can never be separate from your neighbor. You can never be separate from humanity. Why? Because we all share the one life. We all share the one being. We all share the one mind. And any other idea of another being, or an idea of another truth, or the idea of another self, it is false. And it's what has blinded the minds and blinded the eyes and created the suffering in this world, created the suffering in your life. Your suffering, all of your suffering has come from a belief in separation. And likewise, all of your joy and happiness and peace will come from the knowing of your oneness and that you are love only. And that only takes a shift in the way you think, a shift in your perception. So, will it be today? There is no sin. There is nothing keeping you from standing, from embracing, from welcoming, from inviting your true reality. There is no sin. There is no separation. There are no blocks. There are no devils. There's no demons. There's no hell. There's nothing that can separate you from this love. As the writer said in Romans, he was true about that. There is absolutely nothing. It was all an illusion. It was all false information. In many cases, it was just religion. Man's attempt to find his way back to God. Well, God only has one plan for salvation. And that plan for salvation is that nothing has never occurred. You have never been separate. It was all a dream. It was all vain imaginings. It was all a fantasy. You went prodigal for a second, for a minute, for a day, for a lifetime. But God, even in his love, demonstrated that he had reconciled all of us from our dreams, from our vain imaginings, from our fantasies, from our hallucination, that God was demonstrating in Christ that he had reconciled that which he is back unto himself. And so that's where we are. We remain where God created us. We are still the holy home of God. Right now, you've always been. So we release all the falsity in an instant. We just release the past. We release all anxiety about the future because there is no judgment. There is no guilt to be had. We are whole. We are innocent. All humanity. Why would one enter into suffering? It's insanity. Why would one give their allegiance to a false idea called sin? So there is no sin. I'll say it again. There is no sin. You are not a sinner. You've never been and never will be. I don't care who says it. You are not. And I say it with boldness and with certainty and confidence that you are not. You remain as God created you. And that's a fact. It's a matter of fact. And when you say yes to it, it becomes a fact in your life. It becomes a reality. It becomes a knowing, an intimate knowing of your true nature, your true essence as God. It'll make you happy. So creation is unchanged. What God did in creation, we haven't undone that. What God did in creation, it hasn't been altered. Heaven has not been affected, not one iota, by our dream of separation. Heaven has not been tinkered or tampered with, not one iota, by any thought of separation, by any thought that we have become something other than what God created. Creation remains unchanged. You remain unchanged. This world is just like a movie, a nightmare of a movie, an insane movie where mankind is running all over the place, trying to make of himself something that he's not. And it has created a tremendous amount of pain and suffering in humanity, needlessly. But the light has come. We now have revelation of who we are. This is what the old saints of the old dreamed of, that they saw within the future. That we would walk in the glory of God, and we can, and I am, and you can, and you are right now. Because God has crowned you with glory and honor, just like he crowned your elder brother. He glorified you just like he glorified your elder brother. He sanctified you just like he sanctified your elder brother. We all receive the same thing in creation, and it remains unchanged. Would you still hold? Would you still hold return to heaven back? With this awareness, will we still hold heaven back? Our return to home? With this awareness, with this consciousness, with this knowledge, will you still hold heaven back? Will you still judge your brother? Will you still judge yourself in unrighteousness? With this awareness, will you still project attack on another? Will you still withhold your love from another or from yourself? With this awareness, will you still see an unloving father? I say not. How long? Oh, Holy One. How long? How long will we continue to play these children games? How long will we continue to play with sharp-edged children toys like sin and guilt and fear? How long is the question? And so I went the long route. I wanted to really share the course's idea on what is sin before we move forward with today's lesson. And now that that is done, we can speedily go through this day's lesson and have a clarity that we never thought. Some of you are just like feeling weight lifted off of your shoulders from hearing this message, from hearing the fact that the radiant beauty that you are and always will be has dispelled any idea of you being otherwise. You have always been the radiant beauty, the shining star. You've always been love only. Embrace it, caress it, enjoy it, share it, extend it. The world needs to wake up. The world needs to know. And as a representative of the light that we all share, let your light shine in everywhere and in everyone and in every activity and event that you participate in. Regardless of if you're just going to the bathroom, let your light shine. If you're going to the post office, let your light shine. If you're going to worship with others, let that light shine. If you're going to work, let your light shine. If you're sleeping, let the light shine. If you're going grocery shopping, let the light shine. If you're going to a sporting event, let the light shine. Let the love shine. Love is always shining. Your radiant beauty is always shining. So here we go. Without forgiveness, I will still be blind. Sin is the symbol of attack. Now this can really make sense to you. Behold it anywhere, and I will suffer. For forgiveness is the only means, it's the only way whereby the vision of oneness, Christ's vision, comes to us. It is the only way, it's through forgiveness. And forgiveness said, what I thought my brother did to me, it has not occurred. I only thought he did that to me because I was looking through the eyes of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. But now that I'm looking through the eyes of Christ, my brother hasn't done anything. He was crying out for love, and I offered him the love. He was crying out for release, and I offered him my forgiveness. And in so doing, I was forgiving myself. I was loving myself. Why? Because my brother is myself. Forgiveness is the only means whereby Christ's vision comes to me. Let me accept what God's sight, what Christ's sight shows me as the simple truth. Let me accept the reality that there is only love. That is the simple truth. In reality, there is only love. That is the simple truth. There is only oneness. That's the simple truth. And I am healed completely through the simple truth. Your healing comes through the knowing of the simple truth that you are one with God and with all humanity. That's the way your healing comes, because the sickness is in the mind, in the belief in sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. But now that we have let that go, because we have embraced the truth of who we are, we have let the insanity of sin and attack, we have let that go. We have released that. That is no longer a part of our reality. It's never been a part of our reality. It was a part of a dream of separation. We have waken up from the dream. We have been enlightened. We have recognized the truth that is true always. We have been born again, again, and again. We have been what? We have been set free by the truth that is true always. And so we are healed completely. And when we are healed completely, all humanity is healed. Why? Because now we see through the eyes of Christ. We see the face of Christ in all humanity, and we remember God. We remember love. We remember ourselves. Brothers and sisters, come and let me look on you. Let me look on all humanity. Your loveliness reflects my very own. Because now I'm seeing through the eyes of Christ, and I only see loveliness. I only see radiant aliveness, radiant beauty in my neighbor. Because I only see it in myself. I see it everywhere. God is everywhere and in everything. And what is not in alignment with that, it's just crying out for love. They're just crying out for love. They want to be released from the children's sharp-edged toys. They want to be released from the childish ways. They're crying out for love. Dare we judge them? Dare we do anything but extend the love to them? For to deny anyone is to deny yourself. It's to deny God, because we're all one. And so the game is over. Game over. Like they say, game over. When you wake up to the truth, when you become enlightened and through the recognition of who you are, game is over. Deception, self-deception is over. Hatred is over. There's only loveliness. Only. You are only love. And so is all humanity. And it's easy to identify the crying out for love. It's easy. But what's much easier is the recognition that we remain the same as God created us. Even the neighbor that's crying. They're crying because they're not aware. And so we become the light to make them aware. We don't judge them. We can do this. We can be this. We are this. So, brother, come and let me look on you. Your loveliness reflects my own. Your sinlessness is mine. Now that we know that there is no sin. So the Son of God is sinless, and in his innocence is his salvation. In his innocence is my salvation. So we have to see all humanity in their sinlessness. Otherwise, we don't see ourselves that way. In humanity's sinlessness, in his innocence is his happiness, his joy, and his peace. There we call them anything else. There we label them anything else. There we judge them. There we lay any charge to what God has created. Lest we find ourselves fighting against love. And we can never win that. No, we are love. Why would you fight against yourself? Humanity's sinlessness is my sinlessness. We stand forgiven. We stand forgiven. We have forgiven the idea of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. We have given that up for a different perception, and that perception is love. To forgive is to what? Give up one perception for another. We give up the man-made idea of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear for the idea of love and oneness that we all share. That is what forgiveness is. And we stand as one in God. We stand as equal in God. We stand as the love of God. It's not that we have become something. It's that we affirm that what God did in creation, it remains unchanged. And so we're going to end today's lesson with this affirmation. So, would I look upon everyone today? In what way? As one, as love. So I would look upon everyone today as love and as oneness. All humanity is God's sons and daughters. All humanity is God's creation. It's God's creation. All humanity. Our fatherhood, or the fatherhood of God. The fatherhood of God, meaning that God is the father of all living things. So in God's fatherhood was all things created, was all humanity created, was all living things created. And God gave them all to be a part of us. God gave all of us in this idea, in this reality of oneness. We are not separate, but we share the very same life. There is one that is breathing all of us with the same breath, not different breaths, not multiple breaths, but the one breath, the one life, the one love, the one being that we all share, including my very own self, including your very own self. There are none excluded. None, zero. If there's one excluded, it's not whole and complete. And God is whole and complete. Love is whole and complete. Who you are whole and complete, because there's nothing missing, nothing broken. And we accept all living things. We don't reject any. So today, I honor my Father and his fatherhood. I honor that. I'm devoted to that. Like Jesus was devoted to what? The will of God. I'm devoted to the will of God. I honor the truth that is true always. And I honor that truth through humanity. The divine in me only see the divine in them. I honor the truth. I call humanity innocent. I'm honoring the truth. There is no judgment. There is no sin consciousness. There is no guilt. There is no hell to go to. We have just left hell when we have left that idea of sin, guilt, and fear. We left it. It was an imagined place. It was an imagined creation of our own mind. There we send someone. There we sin and lay a charge to God elect and send them to something unthinkable. That ends today. Quit using that idea to bring people into fear. There's nothing to fear. Fear has torment. You wouldn't send your own child to a torture chamber. Why you think a loving God would do it? That's insane. Stop it. You can get people to bless you without putting them into fear or guilt or sin consciousness. You don't need to use that tactic. No, but be loving. And extend only love. Teach only love. For that is who we are. Today, I honor my Father through humanity. And thus, I hope this day to recognize my very own self. And so it is true. Without forgiveness, I would still be blind. because we have chosen to forgive, we are full of light. We are full of the glory of God, which is light. We are full of the love of God, which is light. And that's Workbook Lesson 247. Thank you so much for joining me for today's session. I know it was a little lengthy, but hey, this was a very important lesson. This was a very important subject. This was a very important time to correct an error. And we're not done with it. We're just getting started. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles. You are that miracle. Bye-bye.